Okay, this is Algebra 1, test number 3. We got through section 1.4. This is part 2, picking up on number 12. Tells you to write these numbers as a percent. So first thing, look at what that word percent means. That means per, and think about that. The rest of that word says cent. Think about what you know cents are. That's there's 100 cents in the dollar. Centuries are made up of 100 years. So per, it's actually per hundred. If you look at that number 0.38, you know that the 3 is in the 10th spot and the 8 is in the 100th place. I say spot, place. So the 3/10 and 8/100ths. So you always go to the last one. So it's actually 38% or per hundred. You know what percents are. This is when you're writing it as a symbol that has a slash with the two bubbles like that. But if it's written as percent or per hundred, this is that. So 38% is 38 per hundred. So you could simply write it as 38%. If it was a number that wasn't in the hundredths place, then you'd have to make it go to the hundredths place in order to create it, like 3/4, for example, or like this one we're going to look at, number 13, 1/3. Now, that third is in the ones place, or another way you can do this is you could say this says 1/3, 1/3, or you could say 1 divided by 3. So just like a problem we did a few minutes ago, or on the first part of the video, 1 divided by 3. You know that 3 doesn't go into the number 1, so we create a decimal out of it, create the number 10 out of it. 3 times 3 gives you 9, which is the closest thing. When you subtract that from 10, you're going to get 1, bring the next 0 down, and it's going to keep repeating. You'll have the same pattern. Notice it's going to keep coming out 10. So we have 3. It'll be the decimal is going to go here, 0.33333, but it tells us to write it as a percent. So if we look at it just like number 12 was, if we look at that number, that's not the answer, 0.333, and it keeps going and going and going. We know that this again is the tenths place. This right here is the hundredths place. And then if you go past that, when you look at this one, it's the thousandths place. That's too far. We don't want to go to thousandths. So in order to write it as a percent, we're not getting rid of that thousandths place one. We're just going to call it 33.3, and it'll repeat percent. Now, what a lot of people do with this, just to make this a whole lot faster of a problem, once they get a decimal, like number 12 and like this line right here on number 13 is, once they get to that portion, they know since it says percent, they just have to move that decimal once, twice, and that's just as good too. 33.3%. A lot of people look at it and think that way. So that's how you do write as percents from something that is in decimal form and something that is in fraction form. Number 14 tells you to find the greatest common factor. 15 tells you to find the least common multiple. These are a whole bunch of fancy words that you've been looking at since, I think, 4th grade is when you look at this. Um, all you need to know is common factors are numbers that go into the numbers that you're looking at, the greatest common factor. So when you're looking at number 14, don't get it confused with this one. Just look at your factors. Like if you factor the number 10, you know 1 times 10 is 10, and you know 2 times 5 is 10. There's no other factors in the number 10. So there's only 4 of them. So look at those 4 numbers and see if they go into this number 58. And you could do it the same way. You don't have to list out all of the factors of 58. That's the best part about doing a smaller one first. You know that 1's going to go into it and 58 is, but there's no reason to use 1 because we can't, that's not going to be the greatest one. That's not going to be the one that will reduce the fraction. You know 5 doesn't go into it and 10 doesn't go into it because it doesn't end in the numbers 0 or 5. You know that 5 times 10 is 50, and 6 times 10 is 60, so it's not 58. So you know you can't use this one, and then again, 5 doesn't go into it because it doesn't go into that one. So the number 2, since this is even, 2 goes into it as well. So even without listing any of the other factors of 58, you eliminate your factors of 10 to do it. So 2, since it's even, is your greatest common factor for number 14. 2, not 14, 2. Now, least common multiples get bigger. Multiples are when you count by numbers. If I count by 15s, I always take the smaller one. 15. The next number when you count by it is 30. The next one's 45. The next one's 60. The next one's 75. It keeps going and going and going like that. I stopped at that one because we already passed the least common multiple. When you count by 20s, 20, 40, 60, you got to one that they have in common. Least means smallest one. Common means they have the same number. So the smallest one that's the same is this number right here, 60. So that's the difference between your greatest common factor and your least common multiple. Again, something you looked at in the fourth grade for the first time. This is a lot of the beginning of Algebra 1's a lot of stuff that you've seen before. Very little of it is actually new. 15 tells you to find the perimeter. Now, the only mistake people make with perimeter is they get it confused with area. Everybody in here has done a ton of area and a ton of perimeter problems before you got to Algebra 1. Y'all done them. I know you've done them. But like I said, this is what Algebra 1 students get confused. They try to do area equals length times width. Okay, that's a great formula. It's just a wrong formula because we're not looking for area. We're looking for perimeter. You don't have to remember a formula to find what perimeter is. Think of a perimeter as a fence around something. If you ever watch them old war movies and stuff like that, it'll say like secure the perimeter. So find the distance around the thing. You know that this is 4 feet over here, so this one's going to be 4 feet as well. You know this one's 2 feet down here, so this one will be 2 feet as well. So if you add 4 and 4, you get 8, and 2 and 2, you get 4. 8 and 4 together is 12 feet. The perimeter for this one is 12 feet. If you use the formula, some of y'all would prefer to do that. Perimeter is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. It doesn't matter which one you call length and which one you call width. You'll still get the same 12 feet as your perimeter. A car travels 408 miles in 7 hours. Find the unit rate. Get used to this word right here, everybody. Rate. You can think of that, and this is how most people think of it. You can think of that as speed. And the reason I tell you to think of it as speed, because everybody knows in here when you look on a speedometer in a car, you know everything's measured in miles per hour, mph. Okay? So what that means is miles per hour. That's how you'd write it mathematically. Miles divided by hours. So if you take what you got going on, you have 408 miles. So we'll just put 408 right here. And you take 7 hours. There's your hours. Then all you have to do is divide 408 by 7. When you do that, you get the number 58.2857, and it keeps going past that. Now, the reason I didn't write any more than that is because this last line tells you to round it to the nearest tenth if necessary. Again, we looked at this a little while ago. This is your tenths place. That's your tenths place. This is your hundredths place, and it keeps going past that. Thousandths and 10,000ths. It keeps going. You don't need that hundredths place. So rounding, that 2 is either going to stay the same or it's going to go up. It's never going to go down. The way you determine if it stays the same or goes up is you look to the one right next to it on the right. If it's 5 or greater, again, I'm not teaching y'all to round. You already know this. I'm just refreshing it for you. If it's 5 or greater, that 2 is going to go up. We have an 8, so it's going to go up. So we have 58.3, not 2 anymore, and it's miles per hour. Again, you could write it as miles per hour. The next problem, number 16, is almost an identical problem. Clearly, the numbers are different, and it's not even dealing with miles per hour anymore. But notice it's the same exact setup. Again, think of it as miles per hour, even though it's not, because you know that miles is a distance measurement, and hour is a time measurement. So if you want to separate it that way, 200 meters is a distance measurement. 33.3 seconds is a time measurement. So rate equals distance over time, miles per hour. So 200 meters over 33.3 seconds. And you do it the same way. Divide 200 by 33.3, and you get 6.00600. And again, it keeps going past that. The same directions are given to you at the end, though, rounded to the nearest tenth, so you don't have to go past this number right here. Don't look to that next number 6 that comes after the 0. That's irrelevant. This is the one you look at, this 0. If that number is 5 or greater, then the underlined 0 would go up. Since it is not 5 or greater, therefore this track runner is 6.0 miles per, not miles, excuse me, 6.0 meters per second. And again, we're rounding both of those last two problems. So that's an approximation based on rounding. Number 19 and 20, you want to write an algebraic expression for the phrase. This is just lesson 1.1. Product, you have to know what that means. Product means multiply. That's all it means. So the product of m and 11, m times 11. That's not the prettiest way to write it, but that's accurate. M times 11. Most of y'all probably wrote it this way, 11m. That's a better way. Again, it's perfectly right to write m times 11, but it just looks prettier to write it 11m. 2 times the sum of s and y. Now, this one's a little bit tricky. Times, again, that's easy, just like the last one. Multiply. The sum, you got to know that sum means to add. Again, that's not a new word for y'all. Times, product, sum, none of that's new for y'all. The sum of s and y. So s plus y. Okay, that's part of it. But it says 2 times that. Now, you know order of operations says that if I multiply 2 times s plus y, right here, all I have written right here is 2 times s, not 2 times s plus y. It's not multiplying by both of them. We'll talk about the distributive property soon. And the only way that we can make the sum happen before the multiplication based on order of operations is to create a grouping symbol around it or parentheses. So if you didn't put the parentheses in, make sure you do that now. If you have s plus y and then you have times 2 after it, that's fine. But it has to have the parentheses. Again, for the same reason, this is not accurate based on what it's saying. Because what that's going to do is it's going to tell you to multiply y times 2 first before you add. That's not what you're trying to do. The only way to make that last part right there accurate is to do this. Now it's accurate. Just like we had it a minute ago. This is probably your best way to write it, though. 2, I always put coefficients first, times s plus y. Number 21 said number 21 and 22, or number 21 is just like 19 and 20. I'm not sure why it wasn't put with it. It says to just define your own variable. So instead of having a variable given to you, you need to define it yourself. It says the quotient of 10 times a number and 8. Okay, quotient of 10 times a number and 8. This is probably the most forgotten math word that you use, quotient. It's been the same since you ever saw it, though. If you ever see something that you're not too sure about, it probably means division. So the quotient of 10 times a number. This is why it tells you to define your own variable. Use x. If you don't like x, use another one. X is the one we use primarily in here, though, so it's probably easier for you to get used to it. It says the quotient of 10 times a number and 8. So this is the part we're going to focus on. 10 times a number. 10 times a number is 10x, or 10 times a variable. It says the quotient of that and 8. Again, quotient means to divide, divided by 8. There's your expression right there. 10x, or 10 times a number, divided by 8. Don't let that word quotient fool you. 22 has this word evaluate pop up. That's a fancy word that just means plug it in and simplify it. Okay? All of them are really easy numbers. In place of u, we're going to plug in 14. So 14 plus, in place of x, we're going to plug in 6. So right here, plus 6. And in place of y, we're going to plug in 2. So right here, we're going to plug in 2. Now 6 is right next to 2. That don't mean the number 62. You know that when two things are right next to each other, you know that means you got to multiply them. If you want to put a set of parentheses around it where you don't make a mistake, it's probably a good idea. I'll put a dot between them. Now, order of operations tells you before you add 14 and 6, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You know before you do the Aunt Sally part of the addition and subtraction part, you got to do multiplication and division. So you do 6 times 2 first and get 12, and then add it to 14. 14 plus 12 is 26 is your simplified version. 23 says a pair of shoes cost $27.99. State sales tax is 8%. Use the formula C equals P plus RP to find the total cost of the shoes, where C is the total cost. That's what you're going to pay when you walk out the store. P is the price that you see on the shelf, and R is the sales tax rate. This is very simple to plug in, but there's one catch to this that people make a mistake on. So let's plug in everything we know. We don't know what C is. This is what we're trying to find out. It says what is the total cost, or find the total cost. So C equals the price. We got a price. That's $27.99 plus the rate, and this is where the hang up happens on the rate. We know the sales tax is 8%. I'm going to write 8 for a second, then I'll show you what it's supposed to be in just a second. Times, since it says times P, $27.99, the same $27.99. This is what I meant by there's a hang up with this. You don't, it says 8%. You always multiply when you're talking about percents, but you don't multiply per 8. You multiply by what 8% actually is. 8%, we did it a minute ago when we went the other way with it, is actually 8 per 100, or 0.08. So we're going to multiply not by 8%, we're going to multiply it by 0.08. So again, before you do your addition and subtraction, like on number 22, you do your multiplication. 0.08 times $27.99, and then add that to $27.99 again, and you're going to get a cost now of 30.22, and it keeps going past this, 92. What do you know about money? Now notice it doesn't tell you to round it on this one. Everybody in here knows when you're dealing with money, you have cents, there's 100 of them in a dollar. So you're not going to go past this. It's not going to be to the nearest tenth this time. It's going to be to the nearest hundredth. Another thing with money, it follows a different rounding rule. It's never going to round down, or it's never going to stay as 2. It's always going to round up. So you don't have to look at this one to determine, even though it's the same on this one, you don't have to look at that 9. You're going to round that 2 up to 3. So the cost of the shoes is now $30.23. Don't follow your normal rounding rules with money. Number 24, again, is that word evaluate. Evaluate the expression. AB squared. A is 6, so in place of A, we plug in 6. B is 4. In place of B, we plug in 4. And together they are squared. Now, it's not 64 squared. You know those two numbers are right next to each other, so it's probably a good idea for you to stick a dot in between them where you don't make that mistake. 6 times 4. Now, you do, according to your order of operations, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, you do exponents before you do multiplication and division. But since 6 and 4 are inside of the parentheses, that takes precedent. That goes first. 6 times 4 gives you the number 24, and then 24 is being squared. When you square something, you multiply it times itself, 24 times 24. And when you multiply 24 times itself, you get 576. 25 says you can use the formula C equals 5 over 9 times F minus 32 to convert temperature in degrees Fahrenheit to temperature in degrees Celsius. What is 77 degrees Celsius? Or what is 77 degrees Fahrenheit in degrees Celsius? So plug in what you know to find out what you don't know. it says, what is it in Celsius? That means we don't know what C is. C equals 5 over 9 times F minus 32. We do have an F degree right here, 77. So in place of F, we're going to plug in 77. Now it's a simple order of operations problem. Do the subtraction since it's in parentheses first. 77 minus 32 is 45. Now this is an easy fraction to multiply by because of the common factors. Now, C equals 5 over 9 times 45. Anytime you're dealing with multiplying fractions, and you have one that's a fraction like 5 over 9 and one that's not like 45, you can make it a fraction by putting it over what? 1. So now what you can do is cross cancel. Or you could multiply straight across 9 times 1 and get 9 at the bottom, and 45 times 5 and get a great big number at the bottom. But it is faster to cross cancel something that has the same common, if there's a common factor in both of them. 9 goes into itself 1 time, and it goes into 45 5 times. So when you multiply straight across now, 5 times 5 is 25, and 1 times 1 would be 1. There's no reason to write anything over 1. Here is your degrees in Celsius when it's 77 degrees. 25 degrees. Number 26. Okay, then we just have a few order of operations problems to go through, 26 through 29. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Keep going back to that. Do the innermost set of grouping symbols first. Remember, P doesn't just stand for parentheses. It stands for any grouping symbol. Do this part first. 12 minus 2 is 10. So now we have 10 squared divided by 5, and all of that is being multiplied by 2. 10 squared comes next. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Do your parentheses, then your exponents, your multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Notice I have MD next to each other and AS next to each other, not in one line below each other, because you do them at the same time. But this tells you to do what's inside the innermost grouping symbol. This is next, 10 squared. This is not going to be 20. If you got 20, you did the wrong thing. Remember, it's not 10 times 2. It's 10 times 10, which is 100. So 100 divided by 5 is now inside that grouping symbol before it multiplies by 2. 100 divided by 5, now we're going to do that part and get 20. And then 20 times 2, the last step is 40 is what you should have for that one. $27, again, we have a simple problem here. 8 times 4 plus 14 divided by 6 minus 5. The mistake will come in. People will try to do the addition and subtraction before the division in the middle. But we're doing what's inside parentheses first. 4 plus 14 is 18. 8 is multiplied by 8. And then in the middle, notice it says division. I know it's kind of small on those papers, everybody. 6 minus 5, we'll do that set of parentheses too and divide by 1. That's going to be nice and neat at the end. So 8 times 18, when you just multiply those two by each other, 8 times 8 is 64. When you carry your 8 right here, 8 times 1 plus 8 is 164. Again, it says divided by 1. We know anything divided by 1 is whatever it was when it started. So 164 is your simplified version. 28 says 3 squared times 32 plus 12 divided by, again, that's a division, not a plus, 4. Okay. No set of parentheses here. Again, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Excuse comes up first. 3 squared is first. 3 squared is 9 times 32. Where people make mistakes with this is they try to do shortcuts with this because it's easy, and then they'll lose an operation or so and mess the whole problem up. Now it says 9 times 32 and 12 divided by 4. You're not doing the plus at all right now. You're doing this right here, 9 times 32. 9 and 32 gives you 288. And 12 divided by 4 is, that's an 8, is 3. So now we have 288 plus 3. Now you can do the addition in the middle to get to 91. 29 looks a little longer. It's just as easy though. You do the innermost parentheses first. This is the innermost one, the innermost group and symbol. When you're inside the group and symbol, before we do the subtraction, we're going to do the exponents. 5 squared is 25, minus 4 squared is 16. That's still in the innermost set of parentheses. This still says divided by, it still says 6 squared, this still says plus 9, and this all is being multiplied by 13 after. So again, this is the next part. We evaluated the exponents. Now we have 25 minus 16, which is 9. So now we have 6 squared divided by 9 plus 9 multiplied by 13. Again, order of operations. Before you do 9 plus 9, you know you got to divide. Before you do division, you know you have to evaluate exponents. 6 squared is going to be 36. So it's 36 divided by 9 plus 9. All that multiplied by 13. Again, before you add 9 and 9, you know you have to divide 36 and 9 to get 4 plus 9. And again, before you try to do the multiplication 13 times that, you do what's inside parentheses. 4 plus 9 to get 13. 13 times 13 is 169. Number 30 says to evaluate V equals BH for B is 30 inches squared, H is 20 inches. So volume is what we're looking for, equals B. B is 30 inches squared, and H is 20 inches squared. So it's right next to it, so it's times 20, and that's over 3. So 30 times 20, we know V is 600 divided by 3. Your volume is 200 square, or cubic in this case, inches. Volume is 200 cubic inches.